So with that, what I want to do is go around. My colleague Virginia will call out your name. If you can go ahead and then once your name is called out, say what organization you're part of and answer the following question. What was your favorite hobby when you were 16 years old?
Ooh.
What was your favorite hobby when you were 16 years old? We'll first start with the task force members, and then we are going to ask the city and county of Denver staff to also answer that question. So go ahead, Virginia, and call your first name.
It's going to be Lindsay. Lindsay Miller, please. Would you do the honors? Welcome.
Gosh, I was worried I was gonna have to go first. Um, Beyond Growth Strategies, the consulting company, is who I'm with, and I don't know, I guess playing volleyball at
Oh,
16. Yeah.
that's great.
That's awesome. I see Joel is very prepared. So, Joel, how about if you do the honors? What did you do at 16 years old?
Hi, Joel Noble. I was when we started this effort, I was on the Denver Planning Board. I'm no longer on the planning board. I live in Curtis Park, and Caitlin Quander, who's on here, who's part of this task force, represents the planning board now. At 16, I was screwing around with computers every chance I could get. So it didn't matter if it was supposed to be in class or somewhere else at the time. I was probably screwing around with computers.
Anna is next.
Hey guys.
Hold on.
Only mute, only have one unmuted. The other needs to be muted.
How about this? There we go. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
perfect.
I always kind of struggle knowing what organization I represent. I think I'm here because I was once a rezoning applicant, but I am also on the I'm a YIMBY Denver member. Not sure
Mhm.
why you guys chose me to be here, which I'm very grateful for. But when I was 16, I was a bit of a farm girl and milked goats and rode horses.
Cool.
I love it. Kyle?
Okay, well, I'm
Kyle's
staff.
member, he's staff, so skip him,
Yeah.
Virginia. He goes
I'm
later.
sorry, Kyle. The boss said I have to skip you. Lou.
Hi, I'm Lou Raiders. I'm president of Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association and also chair of the Cherry Creek Steering Committee. And I'm probably older than most people here. So when I was 16, the only thing I wanted to do was drive because and maybe that's still the way it is today. My mom wanted me to sit at my sewing machine, but I'd use any excuse I could to, drive to the store, do errands. But that was my day when girls could not both be cheerleaders and on a sport. If any of you remember that, long time before Title IX. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for
Okay.
sharing. Brittany.
Oh, that's me. I just unmuted myself. Brittany Catalinas with Be Connected and Connected Technologies. What did I do at 16? I loved sports and hanging out with friends and having carefree nights and doing things I definitely will never talk about. So I'm glad to be here with no charges in life and just happy. But yeah, 16 was, I wish I could go back to, thought I had responsibilities, but not really. I liked my part-time job too. So I thought work was great back then. It's great now, but it was just much simpler. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. How about Kate? Kate Hilbert.
Hello, Kate Helberg with Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver. I think my favorite hobby at 16 was probably skiing.
Okay.
All right. Steve Hurley.
Hi, folks. I'm Steve Harley. I report back to the Baker Historic Neighborhood Association. And at 16, I was in my personal laboratory alloying metals and building stink bombs.
Ooh.
I wasn't expecting
All
that one.
right.
I loved it. Melissa?
Hi, Melissa Horn. I'm with Councilwoman Sandoval's office. And when I was 16, I was playing volleyball.
I was doing the same. Bruce?
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I'm Bruce O'Donnell with Starboard Realty Group. I do a lot of land use and zoning and entitlement advisory work in Denver over the years. And at 16, my favorite pastime was probably driving too fast and too recklessly on Colorado Boulevard. And you can't do that anymore, so that was it.
I love it. It
How
was
many stoplights?
Colorado Boulevard.
I know. How many stoplights were there? I bet you there were not that many back then.
Oh, well, fewer than today, certainly.
That's great. That's great. So let's start with the city and county of Denver staff, Virginia, if you want to call them.
Yes, ma'am. How about ladies first, please?
Wasn't expecting that. I had to find my mute button, but hi everybody. I'm Liz Weigel. I'm the supervisor for the rezoning team with the city. And when I was 16, I was a big runner, so like cross country and track. But in my spare time, I was also like a big movie buff, and I would go to like see every like Hitchcock movie at the local like movie house all the time. And got my first job as working in a movie theater too.
That's awesome. What distance do you use to run, Liz? Out of curiosity.
Well, it was the 5K with cross country, and I was definitely not a sprinter in track. So it was like middle distance and longer. This was my specialty.
All right. Kyle, finally I can call you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Kyle Dalton. I'm the regulatory planning manager in the Department of Community Planning Development. And when I was 16, I was a marching band nerd playing the mellophone.
Ooh, okay.
Love it. So many surprises, Elizabeth. Rob.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, yes, Rob Haig. I'm a senior city planner with CPD. And when I was 16 years old, I was probably either skateboarding or playing video games.
Okay.
Brandon.
Hello, Brandon Shaver, Senior City Planner with Community Planning and Development and Project Manager for Advancing Equity and Rezoning. Maybe mine's like kind of a mix between Joel and Bruce. I was really into burning CDs, if anybody remembers what that is. Yeah. I've had to explain that to my 9-year-old. She thought I like literally set them on fire or something. But I would burn CDs and then drive around.
I love it. What type of music do you burn?
Oh, anything and everything. If you guys remember Napster, like I just crashed all of my parents' computers.
Oh, wow.
Oh God. Okay. Let's
Andrew.
move on.
Yes. Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Andrew Webb. I am with Community Planning and Development. And when I was 16, I was probably a lot like Bruce and Lou. I really liked to drive around with my friends, but mostly what I was doing, I had this old British Roadster, an MG at that time. And so I spent most of my time trying to get it to run right. Never succeeded.
Oh, man. Oh, boy. Joe?
Yeah, Joe Green, Associate Planner with the City of Denver. When I was 16, I was reading lots of science fiction novels. I think that was about it. And playing video games like Rob.
Okay.
Elizabeth, we have more attendees like Flor
Yeah,
Rodriguez.
we do have. Yeah, we have Flor, Londell, and Caitlin, and that have joined.
Would you like to repeat the questions for them,
yeah.
please? Thank you.
Yeah, so hi, welcome. And what we want to do is for you to say what organization you're representing. And then if you can share what was your favorite hobby when you were 16. So go ahead. Let's go with Flor first.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Yes, I'm Flor, and I previously was just a task force member, but I recently elected new council member. And when I was 16, I just had learned how to drive, and I went to West High School, and I think I spent a lot of time with my cheerleading team. Actually, I was a cheerleader at West High School, so that was like my thing back then. Also, I will say singing Selena music, Selena Quintanilla, not Gomez.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Caitlin?
Hi, Caitlin Quander. I'm a land use attorney in town and also chair the Denver Planning Board. And what was my hobby when I was 16? I did a lot of singing. I sang in high school choir and at our church, and we had, like a really cool church band. And so did a lot of singing.
And I think I see Lundell.
Yes, my name is Londell Jackson, and I am representing myself as a small business owner and a citizen of a longtime citizen of Denver, with being a fourth generation Denverite and a sixth generation Coloradan. When I was 16, I was even more of a nerd than I am now. So I actually had my own microscope, and I was looking at things under the microscope, playing lots and lots of video games. And I think less nerdy, I suppose, I ran track, where I ran the 800 and the long jump, triple jump, sorry.
All right. Well, for what high school did you run that, Lundell?
East High School, the only high school.
East High School. Oh, go Angels! Yeah, sorry. There are a few council people here that are not in that district, so I don't know if they will say the same thing. With that, Stacy Gilmore joined. So, Councilwoman, if you want to introduce yourself and then say what was your favorite hobby when you were 16 and who you represent.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Stacy Gilmore, and I am the councilwoman for District 11. And so that is about 80% of the Montbello community, which I reside in and have raised my family in Montbello, and then Green Valley Ranch. And then I have all of Denver International Airport in my council district as well. And my favorite hobby when I was 16, I would have to say, was being a cheerleader. I went to high school in Brush, Colorado. And if you know anything about state football championships, the Brush Beat Diggers are very well known. And so I have to say, I remember cheering at the games that we played against the Montbello Warriors and so that was, I think, my favorite hobby probably when I was 16 years old, and it served me well, being used to being up in front of the public, etc., doing that. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Well, welcome. So thank you, everybody. I think everybody won, Virginia.
That is correct. All the attendees at the moment are being presented.
I'm about to say it in Spanish. Oh my God. Okay, this is English. I should not. So let's go ahead and start the presentation. So we're going to do, we have 3 individuals from the city and county of Denver that are going to be giving a recap of the task force meeting from last June, and then recapping the strategies, and then going ahead and discussing the strategy we need to discuss today, the second strategy. And just a reminder, there will be times to ask questions. So wait until those times come up, and then you can ask your clarifying questions. If there's anybody from the public here, they will have an opportunity to speak at the last 5 minutes of the meeting. Questions and discussions, as well as breakout group, is all for the task force meeting. With that, let me hand it over to Brendan.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you for that awesome icebreaker. That was really interesting. A lot of common themes there. Well, welcome back, everybody. I really hope that the end of summer has been treating you well, and that you've gotten your kids back to school smoothly, if that's the case for you. So here you can see our agenda for today. I'm going to talk briefly about where we are in the project, and then we're going to move into some takeaways from our last meeting, and then move into our new strategy details for number 2. which is to ensure, sorry, let me see. Oh yeah, this is the meeting where we're going to be ensuring how we provide clear opportunities for input from the public. Sorry, I got my screen mixed up. And then we're gonna do some breakout groups and then move into a larger discussion to get your feedback and ideas. Lastly, I will touch on our approach for our future meetings and then invite comments from the public before we close the meeting with next steps. So here you can see where we are in the project currently. One second again. As you can recall from our meeting in June, we are in the identifying a preferred approach phase of the project, and we're here today to present ideas for the second of our 4 major strategies that we've developed with your help. After sharing these draft approaches for strategy 2 in today's meeting, we will take your feedback, refine our strategies based on your feedback, come back to you with follow-up and additional approaches, and then hoping to conduct another round of public outreach and engagement later this winter, especially with an increased emphasis on reaching our vulnerable communities that are most impacted by rezonings. We're going to then take that feedback into account, bring it back to this group for further refinement, and finalize our preferred approach together. And as a reminder, we are expecting to get in front of City Council with a text amendment proposal for adoption in the first quarter of next year. And after that, we will move into our implementation phase. So once again, here are our 4 proposed strategies. Today's discussion will be focused on strategy 2, which is to create accessible and clear opportunities for public engagement and involvement. Later, I'll share our ideas for using future task force meetings and small working groups to develop approaches for the remaining 2 very important, and I know this group is very excited to talk about these strategies to ensure commitments to equitable outcomes and to revise the rezoning review criteria. With that, I'll pass it to Rob, who will start to share follow-up from our last meeting.
Thanks, Brendan. Go ahead and pop over to the next slide. Howdy, everybody. As Brendan introduced, let's take a quick minute to review the tailored rezoning process approach and the takeaways from our last meeting before we dive into the next strategy. It's really the main focus of today's meeting. So during our last meeting, we got your input and are continuing to fine-tune these 4 rezoning criteria. So as a quick reminder, these criteria are 1, the enhancing equity considerations category. These are primarily applicant-driven rezonings in vulnerable areas or larger properties. It also includes rezonings where there's a change in entitlement, where there's a potential impact or possibility for a need of commitments to ensure an equitable outcome to the rezoning. The second category is the legislative or city-led rezoning category. These are area rezonings that are done in conjunction or follow a plan or are done in order to achieve citywide plan goals. The third category are process relief rezonings. These rezonings include map errors and other rezonings that are directly advance equity goals. This might include, for example, highly affordable housing developments that maybe have light tech funding or are 100% affordable, or maybe include some other advancement to equity goals that we haven't quite identified yet. We want to provide some flexibility in that category. The fourth rezoning category are the standard periodic rezonings. And these are also applicant-driven rezonings and kind of are closest to our current process and would be processed on a regular basis, either quarterly or biannually or some other time period, depending on the amount of applications that we receive. So as part of the refinement of these categories, we looked back at the rezonings that have been processed over the last few years in order to understand how they might fit into these proposed rezoning categories. And as you can see, the majority of the rezoning proposals, again, in the last 3 years since 2019, would fall into this standard periodic rezoning category. I want to quickly call out that for the last 3 years, more than half of all rezoning applications have been for accessory dwelling units. This number has kind of increased over the last 3 years. And again, these are just for rezonings to allow an accessory dwelling unit building form or use in a single unit zone district. And that this diagram is only really representative for the number of rezonings, not the area that the city that was rezoned under each potential category. Now on this slide, it shows what a potential scenario might look like as this project is implemented and the city's approach to planning and rezoning evolves to be more proactive. This might not directly correlate to the number of rezoning applications that are brought through. Right? We don't anticipate that there's this great of a number of legislative rezonings per se, but just kind of think of this as the emphasis on the kind of the either time span or area of the city, or just kind of the overall emphasis on what the future of rezonings in Denver might look like. But by proactively rezoning areas, either legislatively or otherwise, we can alleviate some pressure from vulnerable areas, lift burden from individual property owners to rezone their properties when redeveloping. We can also better coordinate area-wide rezonings with other plan implementation strategies. Some of these plan implementation strategies may include things like revising building form standards, making infrastructure improvements, or coordinating with other city agencies to provide affordable housing or other strategies to mitigate involuntary displacement. Beyond this legislative rezoning category, as you can see, the number of standard periodic rezonings could drastically decrease from their current proportion. And of this remainder of applicant-driven rezonings, we expect to see, a similar number to the standard being these equity, the advanced equity consideration category. So this slide now looks at the simplification of the application forms and requirements that would scale with the complexity for the different rezoning categories. So you can see at the top the enhanced equity considerations being the most complex and moving down towards the process relief categories. These enhanced equity consideration rezoning categories are the most complex, would have the most rigorous application requirements. And on the other end of the spectrum, the process relief category will benefit from simplified application requirements and additional staff assistance. And examples of these changes and alterations that would kind of vary between all of these categories could include additional templates or reduced narratives for applicants, example applications for reference, and shorter application forms with just checkboxes, kind of similar to our accessory dwelling unit rezoning application is today, if you're familiar. So to follow up on some of the comments and discussions during our last task force meeting, we want to go over a few key takeaways. So this first slide, we're looking at the items that we have general consensus for. So first, the task force generally agrees that this rezoning process should be more flexible and would benefit from a tailored approach for different types of rezoning applications. There's also general agreement that tailoring the rezoning process improves the equitable outcomes, either through depending on the area or type of rezoning that might merit additional equity considerations. This is both for applicants and for the community in which the rezonings are taking place. And finally, despite the need to iron out a few of the details, we think we do have the right categories identified, which is largely what we heard from the task force comments, discussions, and the Jamboards as well. So we also want to emphasize we're still seeking input on all of these items. Look forward to continuing these discussions during working group sessions that Brandon will speak to later in this meeting. So that being said, there are topics within these categories that need further discussion. And these items are listed in no particular order. But first, we recognize we still need to finalize the details of eligibility for these different categories and put a finer point on the process for each of these different categories. Second, we need to refine what we mean when we discuss vulnerable areas, specifically as it relates to the enhanced equity consideration category. So our last meeting, we proposed potentially using the NEST priority neighborhoods. And we know that there are some issues and some concerns that were brought up with the task force. So we're still actively looking to define what those areas might be, where there would be a lower threshold for that enhanced equity consideration category. We also need to complete the list for potential strategies for applicants to satisfy the requirements for the enhanced engagement within that enhanced equity consideration category. We need to continue to develop the equity improvements to the standard periodic category, which again, as we've noted, is kind of most similar to the process today. And we also need to finalize the details on how Planning Board will review these applications as they provide this vital input for each of these rezoning categories. So I think we're going to pause here and see if there are any clarifying questions. I don't have the chat up, so if someone could.
Yeah, it's so Joel has his hand raised. Joel, go ahead if you have a clarifying question.
Yeah, just regarding a piece of input I provided at the end of the last meeting, the process relief path really wasn't mentioned in the kind of Q&A write-up document that was attached. And on reflection, I think it's very valuable to have process relief, and I think we should come up with criteria for who would benefit from that. We have some history of council members taking worthy projects and just becoming the applicant, which is sort of the maximum process relief. I would prefer that path where the city identifies a qualifying need for rezoning and just becomes the applicant and takes it through the process, rather than the map amendment path, specifically because the map amendment path bypasses Planning Board. And I think we should still have the transparency of the public hearing at Planning Board, the opportunity for input, and the advice from Planning Board to City Council. So if we just make it known that this is available and the city can become the applicant in these cases, that's a tremendous amount of process relief.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thank you.
So in lieu of time, let's go ahead and continue because we are like 15 minutes behind, and I want to make sure that we have time for the task board members to work together in the small groups. So let's go ahead and continue the conversation with slide number 11. And thank you, Rob, for your presentation. So now it's Joe.
Yeah. So yeah, we will jump into strategy number 2, creating accessible and clear opportunities for public engagement. We've organized the potential improvements into 4 categories. First, we know that we need to reach more people earlier in the process. Then once they have those noticing materials in front of them, those materials in the webpage need to be clearly legible to everyone. Third, after the community's been made aware of the proposed rezoning, we need to encourage community participation by making it as easy as possible to provide comments. And finally, while these improvements can be accomplished through this project, there are other ongoing efforts within the city that can also help implement these improvements, which Fritz will talk about in a bit. So there are different places within the Denver regulatory environment where these improvements can live. Some improvements can be best achieved by updating the Denver zoning code, such as noticing and public hearing requirements, while others might live better in the city's rules and regulations, such as additional application requirements that might be above what's in the code. And then other things might live in the standard operating procedures, such as changes to like the rezoning webpage and things like that. The second 2 can be updated and modified more quickly, which can allow us a little bit more flexibility to fine-tune the improvements based on the results that we're actually seeing. So that can be a helpful place to change things. So our first category, reaching more community members early in the process. This really comes down to noticing. So this table outlines our proposed approach. So for all types of rezonings, we'd like to make sure that renters and business tenants are informed, not just the property owners. And instead of requiring signs to be posted 2 weeks in advance of planning board hearing, signs could be posted right after an application is submitted. This alone would get the word out about a rezoning at least a month earlier than the current process, and potentially even earlier for complex rezonings. And then for the enhanced equity rezonings, where community engagement is particularly important, the noticing requirement itself could be expanded from 200 feet to 400 feet around the property, ensuring that more folks in the neighborhood are aware of the proposal. And then finally, these types of rezonings would also be required to create a community engagement plan. In this plan, they'd be required to detail additional ways that they will ensure that the community is aware of the proposed rezoning and that the community has clear opportunities to provide input. And you can see on the right, there's a column that kind of outlines where we think some of these things might be changed. So when signs are posted and the required inclusion of tenants and renters might likely live in the Denver zoning code, as well as the need for a community engagement plan. But the exact requirements for that plan might fit better within our rules and regulations, which would allow for more flexibility to ensure that the outreach that we envisioned is actually working as we thought it would. Expanding noticing requirements might fit best within the standard operating procedures. But then in our second category, we know that expanding who gets noticed won't be very helpful if the noticing materials are full of jargon and are hard to understand. So we know our noticing materials in the web page need to be updated to ensure that they use simple language, that they rely on graphics when it would convey information more effectively, and that things are translated and accessible to everyone who might want to learn more. We've provided some examples over on the right side of the slide that from cities that we think are doing a good job. And then in addition to just making noticing materials easier to read, we also know that we need to make it easier for people to quickly access information about a proposed rezoning if they want to know more. So one idea was to include a QR code on our notices to help community members who are looking for more information quickly navigate to that web page, as well as making the web page itself easier to navigate and detailing all the ways that folks can provide comments right there. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Fritz.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Well, a big part of this process is looking into how we can engage more people in the rezoning process, get their feedback, whether that's helping them just understand the process, expanding how people can get involved, or creating a framework for more intensive engagement when it's needed the most. The first part of this is creating public engagement guides that clearly explain where public input fits into the rezoning process, how the feedback people provide is used, what are the criteria for rezoning and who uses them and how, and the differences in process between the rezoning types, especially the ones we're proposing. Once we make these guides, they would be translated and made available on the website, along with translated versions of the application forms and other key documents so that people don't have to rely on machine translation or Google Translate for important information. Just want to note that these would not require changes to the code. So, of course, expanding awareness and understanding of the rezoning process is only the first step toward broader and deeper engagement. We also want to find ways to provide more opportunities for people to give their feedback and perspective outside of the existing public hearing process. This could include enhancing the individual web pages for each rezoning case to allow comments, such as the example on the slide from the City of Vancouver in Canada, where each and every rezoning case has an individual page similar to what we're doing now, but that also includes information on the application and on the process generally, contact information for the applicant and the planner, and the ability to comment on the same page. We're also exploring ways to share community feedback with the planning board and public earlier in the rezoning process, ahead of the planning board hearing, so that we can provide greater transparency in the process. This could give the rezoning applicant a chance to address and respond to public comments that we receive in the initial review period, with those responses then shared with the public. Online participation in public meetings has become a truly key feature of the rezoning process since its introduction during the pandemic. It has really opened up the process for people who would not have otherwise been able to participate. But we see the need to keep going and expand public input and participation beyond the typical 2 hearings and find ways to meet people where they are and engage them throughout the rezoning process. Next, please. Thank you. And indeed, for enhanced equity consideration rezonings, we want to go even further to ensure we are getting meaningful input from the people who are most affected. This could mean requiring a community engagement plan with enhanced notification and engagement requirements ahead of a formal application, with the engagement methods vetted and approved by community planning and development to ensure that underrepresented community voices are elevated in the process, including translation and interpretation in the languages of the surrounding community. The applicant would need to show that 1, they did the engagement, and 2, that it was effective in terms of reaching and engaging community. Then we can use key takeaways from that process along with our specific equity metrics to inform equity commitments that the applicant would need to make as part of the rezoning process. Okay, and looking more broadly outside of just the rezoning process, what else can we as a city do to meet our equity goals and commitments? And what are our efforts along those lines? What are we doing now? Currently, the University of Colorado Denver, which is my and many of my colleagues' graduate alma mater, go Lynx, has been conducting a study on improving community engagement and constituent services. The final report for that should be coming fairly soon. There's also a citywide effort underway currently to scope out a system where any interested person or group can sign up to receive email notices for new applications based on their chosen geographic area. Finally, community planning development, always with the acronyms around here. Community planning development's newly formed programmatic plan implementation team is working across agencies and departments in the city to create and expand tools like participatory budgeting and annual reports on our progress toward comprehensive plan and Blueprint Denver goals. So through these slides, we've talked a lot about our ideas and approaches for centering equity and public engagement, improving the process for everyone. And now I'd like to hand it back to Brandon for any follow-up questions.
Yeah, thank you, Fritz. So before we move on to our polling activity, I think I saw a couple hands up, but yeah, if anybody has any clarifying questions, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, let's go ahead and ask Caitlin. I know she has a question, and I know Melissa had her hands up, but it wasn't for her. So Caitlin, go ahead and ask your question.
Sure, thank you. Mine should be really quick. On an earlier slide, there was the idea of posting a notice at the property at the time of application, which, I think that's a good thought. Often, I think, would you say 2 weeks before planning board, and that can be kind of late in the process to learn more. Is the thinking that you would keep up the sign for the whole time until it goes through city council? Because sometimes that can kind of lag from time of application through planning board and sometimes not. So just curious if it goes up and then comes back down, or what you all are thinking on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Caitlin.
That's a great question.
I think, in today's world, we typically have the applicants take them down after the planning board public hearing. And we have not quite thought through when we would want folks to take these initial signs down, but curious, maybe when we get into discussion, we can talk more about what you think the appropriate time might be.
Yeah, and I can jump in just to add a little bit of color, because we've done a little bit of thinking about this, and what we see in other through our peer city research is there are is a requirement for that needs to be within a certain amount of days after the application for a certain amount of days, but then there's also sometimes requirements that it can't be longer than a certain time prior to any other hearings or things that would happen down the line. And I think that helps to account for potential changes in the application. So to Brandon's point, we haven't really finalized. I think that's a great question and something we'll definitely need to iron out as we move forward.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and now, Brandon, if you can update the slides to the last slide where we were. I know now we go into the polling questions. And here, what we're going to do, there are going to be, before we start the polling questions, before you move it, there's going to be 2 polling questions we have. And how we want to do this with the questions is, I want you now for you to look in your chat, task force members, look for Virginia Garcia Pivic. And because you are going to be sending her your answer directly to her. This is a direct message to Virginia. The rest of us, we are not going to see that message. And what we're going to do is that we're doing this in order for all of you to vote. So we have your information, but it's going to be voting on as anonymous as we can do it on Zoom. So I want to make sure that you all that we all go ahead and ask. Go ahead for the polling. I just noticed that we may have missed Bruce's questions. Let me go ahead and do this poll, and then I'll ask Bruce to ask his question. So Bruce, I appreciate you holding on. So let's go ahead, and everybody, if you can find the Virginia Garcia Pivic name. And then this is the first polling question, and it's a yes or no answer. And the question is, do you agree with the general approach described of earlier notification and accessible clear materials for all rezoning? Once again, please send your response of yes, no, or need more information directly to Virginia Garcia Pivic. Let me ask the question again. Do you agree with the general approach described of earlier notification and accessible clearer materials for all rezoning? Let me give you a couple minutes so Virginia can go ahead and tabulate the answers that she is receiving. So we will wait for a couple minutes and then we will ask the next question. We will wait until Virginia says that she has received the answers. The question that we're polling is, do you agree with the general approach described of earlier notification and accessible clearer materials for all rezoning? Hopefully by now everybody has sent directly their response via direct message and chat to Virginia Garcia Pivic with yes, no, or need more information. Virginia, give us an update whenever you can, if we're ready to move on to the second.
I'm counting the votes. Let me tell you. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility and for being open to this new idea that we wanted to bring to you today, to make it anonymous and to respect your preference when it comes to this polling. We're pretty close to get a full quorum.
Okay. Okay. Are we almost done? .
I don't see the response from Councilwoman Sandoval. Everybody else has voted.
Okay, so let's move forward with this at this point. That's great that we got almost everybody.
Thank you.
Let's go to the second question.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Melissa, I'm having technical difficulties, so Elizabeth Horn is voting for me. I can't, my chat function's not working. So my vote should be there, but it's under Melissa Horn.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Sandoval. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Thank you for letting us know. So let's go to the second question. Again, very similar how we did with the first question. Do you agree with the general approach described of requiring additional engagement for enhanced equity considerations rezonings? Let me go ahead and repeat that again. Do you agree with the general approach described of requiring additional engagement for enhanced equity considerations rezonings? Again, similar to the first question, if you can do a personal chat with Virginia Garcia and the PIVIC, and your answers can be yes, no, or need more information. Let's go ahead and take a couple minutes to do that. And then once we're concluded with this question, I will ask to give the opportunity for Bruce to ask his question. And I appreciate his patience. So let's give it a couple more minutes, and then we will move on to the question that Bruce had. Any update, Virginia?
I'm trying to count them, and I will get back to you as soon as I have a firm number, Elizabeth.
Okay. So in the meantime, in lieu of time, I would ask Bruce if you can unmute yourself and ask the question that you were going to ask while this is happening.
Yeah, thank you. And for some reason, my black taskbar at the bottom doesn't have the hand function today. So my question is this. Historically, Denver rezonings have not been about a specific project, but rather about addressing the question of, is this newly proposed zone district the right zone district for a specific address? I'm curious if a lot of this talk and dialogue seems to be leaning towards information that could only be derived about a specific development project. And I'm wondering if the city is moving away from the established norm of that a rezoning is about, is this zone district right for an address and not about a project?
Yeah, I'll take that. That's a really good observation, Bruce. And I don't think that the city is wanting to move away from what we've been doing for all rezonings, and keeping in mind that this is just the enhanced equity considerations category, and we expect those to be about 10% of the rezonings that we process on an annual basis. And I think that you can also, I wouldn't say that you need to have a project like fully penciled out, but maybe components of a project, like do we know if there's going to be commercial on the ground floor? Do we know if there's going to be housing? So not really having to know the exact aspects of the project, but just having a little bit of insight and understanding of what some components of it could be. Does that help?
Yeah, I don't know if it does or not, Brandon. Just it's I would suggest that this is something that, warrants some thought and input, in that we don't accidentally find ourselves in a situation where the dynamics have changed and it wasn't properly vetted.
Yes, and there are definitely, this warrants a lot of thought, and we're definitely going to be bringing this up in future task force meetings and the small working groups that I'm going to propose later on in the presentation. But thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you for giving me the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce, for being flexible and waiting until you could ask your question. Any update, Virginia, that you can provide us? Did everybody vote?
So far, so good. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So would you want to go ahead and provide a tally of each question? Brandon, if you can go back to polling question number 1 in order to provide a tally of the responses when it came to you. Do you agree with the general approach described of earlier notification and accessible, clear materials for all rezonings? What were the results, Virginia?
Consensus for yes.
It was yes. Okay, perfect. And then the second question, if Brandon, you can move it to the next. It's do you agree with the general approach described of requiring additional engagement for enhanced equity considerations rezonings? How was the response?
Yes. Consensus for yes,
okay.
But with people saying that they would like more clarification or more information on this one.
Okay, that's a great point to know. Thank you for that, Virginia. I know this was not easy to do this, so I appreciate you stepping up in order to keep the responses confidential, anonymous. So with that, actually, we are going to go and break you up into 4 breakout groups. There are 4 small groups that have already, I know Virginia has placed you in the groups. This is what's going to happen. There's going to be between 3 to 5 task board members per group. So 3 to 5 task board members per group. And then I see Steve ask a question. When we hear consensus for yes, does that mean unanimous? Would rather have a tally?
I can count the numbers and tell you that, Steve. If you give me a minute, I have to break out the rooms right now. But I would be happy to provide you with the final numbers I have. By unanimous, I meant like if they're 20, 18 say yes.
Okay, so we will do that after the breakout groups, Virginia, because we need to put everybody in the breakout groups, and then Virginia and I will work on this while you all are in the breakout groups. So the breakout groups is going to be 3 to 5 individuals per group. You will have at least one person from the city and county of Denver, one of the planners that will be taking notes and at the same time keeping time to ensure that everybody, all 3 questions are answered. They will provide you the questions. I will share what the questions are. There's 3 questions as a group that you need to respond to. All the notes will be taken by the city and county of Denver representative. And then from there, somebody in the group will be doing the debrief with the larger group. This is not the city and county of Denver person that's taking the notes and keeping time will not do the debrief. Will be one of you in each group. There are 4 groups. These are the questions for the groups. Do you want to put that up the slide, Brendan, or you do not have it? Okay, these are the task force discussion and key questions. There are, for all rezonings, is there additional information you would like to see on public-facing materials? This includes notices, signs, websites, etc. The second question is, for enhanced equity considerations, what elements will help ensure meaningful engagement? And the last question is there anything missing from the approach for strategy number 2, the one that we've been discussing today here? If you did not agree with the approach, what would you change? You will have 20 minutes in the groups. This means that we were allocating, the city council people are going to be allocating almost 6 minutes per question. So that's a total of 18. And from there, we will come back. Melissa has a note that says, just to provide some context, I'm communicating for the councilwoman as she is listening, but is experiencing technical difficulties. Yes, Melissa, thank you for that. You will be placed in the same room as the city council, as the city member, council person, Sandoval. So she can communicate with you. You may be the one providing the communication, but you will be in the same room with her. And that means that she speaks or you speak for her. Okay, that hopefully that answers the questions. With that, it is right now 4:06. This means by 4:36, we will need to be back. I would say 4:35 for the city and county of Denver representatives. They have the 3 questions. They will put it in each group's chat, the questions, and they will manage that everybody talks through this. And I will provide a 2-minute warning that we need to come back to the larger group. And the only people going into the breakout groups are the task force members and the city and county member that has been assigned to that group. So Virginia, if there's any public person, they will stay in the large group here with me. So 4:26. Oh yeah, Brandon. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, I did incorrect math. I'm glad Brandon is doing the math. So we will be back by 4:26, and I will see you then. Virginia, go ahead and allocate the people to the groups.
See you soon.
See you soon. Mm-hmm.
We're here.
Okay. Brandon, aren't you going to one group? We can't hear you. Oh. Okay. Did he go? Okay. Yeah. Okay, no hay más nadie. Okay, yo puse la alarma para darle 2-minute warning.
Perfecto, perfecto.
Así. ¿Cuántos son? ¿Cuál es el tally?
Bueno, mira, en la respuesta para la segunda pregunta hay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 que dijeron que sí. 1 dijo que no. Y 1, 2, 3, 4 personas pidieron más información. Algunas dijeron, por ejemplo, the key question as to whether it meets plans is the same. So while more review is okay, different actual requirements would be hard to support. Otra persona dijo, need more information. I agree in principle, but due to the very recent rulings, this will have to be drafted very carefully. Y alguien más dijo, but still unclear on parameters when something qualifies for enhanced quality considerations. So I want to still learn more info because fully there, because don't want that to be overly broad. That's what this person said.
Okay. Esa es la pregunta número 2. Y la pregunta número 3, ¿cuántos fueron?
La número 1. Número 1.
A la 1, sí.
Sí, perdóname. Pero, perdón, la que te dije ahora fue... Sí, ese fue el número 2. Y ahora voy con el número 1, espérate. Porque tuve que hacer 2 tablitas diferentes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 yes. 1 no. Y 2 personas que dijeron que necesitaban más información.
Ok. So eso no está mal. So déjame hacer porcentajes para así, porque estos queridos.
Las personas presentes son 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 personas.
So 79% dijeron que sí en la primera pregunta. Y en la otra, 64%. Ok. O sea que todavía tenemos a big majority. People win political races with 51% or like even 37%. Así que, ok. Está bien, pero la información, more information is needed. Ok, perfecto. Ay, qué horror hacer esto. Ok. So son 14.
Sí.
Tuviste como Melissa se puso toda muy nerviosa.
Sí, ¿verdad?
Eso es muy típico de AIDS. Oh, no, a mí no me ponga. Digo, a mí no me importa, tú vas a estar allá adentro.
Claro,
Es
claro.
típico de AIDS,
Especialmente que
se
va a
pone.
tener que ser la voz de la consejera, ¿no?
Ujú,
Porque tiene
ujú.
que expresarse.
¿Qué se puede hacer? Ok, 14. Estoy haciendo cada uno para tenerlo, porque el Bruce él le gusta,
Todos los numeritos.
sí, él le gusta, y yo entiendo, yo entiendo.
Sí, sí, sí.
Pero espérate, 79, tengo 79 más 7 más 4, o sea, yo tengo 90%, ¿cómo es eso? Did I do this wrong? 11 dividido en 14 es 79%, ok. 1 dividido en 14 es un 7%. Ah, y 2 dividido en 14 es un 14%. 14, perdón. Yo aquí con. Ok, 14%. Entonces, 14 más 7 más
Son 13 personas
79.
presentes. Bueno, hay 14 personas presentes en la sala, pero solo 13 pueden votar porque la aide de Sandoval no. Entonces son 13 personas.
Ah, pues aquí hace 14, lo que tú me diste.
Claro, porque son 14, pero solamente 13 votan. Espera.
Pero
Primera.
el voto que tú me diste era 11, 1 y 3, eso es 14.
Espera, les voy a contar otra vez. Primera pregunta. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Voy a poner mis lentes. Pues las cositas son chiquitas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 yes para la primera.
Ajá. Ujú.
Uno de ellos votó que no, o sea que son 12, y la councilwoman no dijo ni que sí ni que no, dijo necesito más información.
Esa es una entonces.
Ujú.
O porque tú
Entonces
hacías
tienes
dos.
11 yes, 1 no, 1 I need more info.
Ok,
Make
yo
sense?
pensé que había escrito dos. Ok, so 11 dividido entre 13, eso es 85%. Question one, espérate, 85% es yes. Y
Okay.
entonces 1 dividido entre 13 es un 8 7, 7 punto, oh, I hate when this happens. Es 8% porque es 8%. Oh my God. Ok, no y no. Bueno, como es uno nada más, voy a decir que es 85% yes. Y en pregunta número 2, yo tengo 9 yes, 1 no y 4 más información.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yes, correcto. 1 no. Y después 4 dijeron más información. Y uno de esos 4 dijo sí, pero necesito más información.
Oh, entonces es 3. Ok. Ok.
Ujú.
Ok,
Ok.
so entonces es 9 dividido entre 13, eso es 69%. Ok, entonces el 3 dividido entre 13, eso es 23%. Y entonces el 1 dividido entre 13 es el 8%, 8 o 7. Déjame ver. 69 más 23, 8%. Ok, perfecto, pero uno de estos wanted also more information. Ok.
Yes. Ujú.
Entonces esto es lo que hacemos. Puedo hacer el tally, entonces el de more information, tú puedes decir lo que es el more information. Leer lo que ellos dijeron, o es demasiado lo que ellos dijeron.
Ok, agarro uno de ellos nada más.
Y agarras uno de ellos y entonces le damos más información. Ok,
Perfecto.
perfecto. ¿Y cómo te sientes?
Bien, bien. Y estuvo, al principio me dio un poquitito de nervios cuando no vi todos los nombres para hacer los breakout rooms. Estaban solamente los presentes. Entonces dije, ok, va a tener que ser in the spot. Pero a medida que iban
Ya,
entrando y mientras iba haciendo contigo las presentaciones, los iba añadiendo. Así que después hubo que mover un par que lo hicimos contigo, así que salió todo perfecto, gracias a Dios.
perfecto, perfecto. Y yo te digo cuándo mandar un mensaje, 2 minutes left. Ahí tienen
Ajá.
8 minutos y medio más.
Yo igual lo programé también en la computadora para que ellos tengan en la pantalla de cada uno de los breakout rooms, cuando falten 2 minutos, el aviso de que faltan 2 minutos.
Ah, entonces lo tienen. Ok, perfecto. No tenemos que
Yep.
mandárselo.
Ujú.
Eso sube para ellos. Ok,
Sí.
perfecto.
Ujú.
Y entonces ahí es donde tú le das, ok, we're done, y ahí es donde se acaba.
Sí.
Ok. Son bastantes preguntas. Esta gente cree que,
Pero bueno,
pues, bueno, ¿qué se puede hacer? No se puede hacer más nada.
no. Por ahí están todos quietecitos, bien, tranquilos.
Que nadie está preguntando. Y te iba a decir lo que me compartiste ayer, no te preocupes.
Ay, gracias, gracias.
And this is being recorded.
Good point.
No, but I'm glad que la gente vio cómo hicimos el tally. If somebody has to question us.
Sí, y perdona que no tenía todos los números, pero como tuve que crear dos tablitas para que estén claritos los dos, pero ya está todo bajo control.
Okay.
Y ya me remarqué acá lo que voy a leer cuando me lo preguntes.
Ok, perfecto.
Ujú.
Oye, ¿y esa lámpara que tienes detrás de ti? ¿Qué es esa lámpara?
¿Tú conoces este lugar que se llamaba World Market, que tiene cositas de
Oh,
todo el
yeah.
mundo? Bueno, esa la compré hace siglos, es como hecha de papel, me
Ajá.
encanta. Y me gusta así el color que da entre el naranja de aquí y ese amarillo atrás, ¿no? Está lindo.
Está lindo, porque yo
Es
estoy
mi
pensando,
misma,
yo quiero cambiar esto.
bien, bien. Y es mi misma habitación, pero en lugar de ponerlas como antes estaba aquí, que le da muy poco fondo y esto se veía, como lo vemos acá, lo puse de costado. Entonces la habitación parece mucho más larga, tiene más perspectiva. Me gusta más. Y la gente me ha dicho que
Ah,
le gusta más. ¿Viste? Me compré dos escritorios, tengo uno acá y otro acá. Entonces puedo trabajar
entonces
más.
este escritorio donde tú pones tu computadora.
Sí, sí. Entonces parece mucho más perspectiva, parece muchísimo más grande mi habitación.
Sí, eso es verdad,
¿Viste?
totalmente, sí.
Sí.
Yo
Y tiene
necesito
mejor
cambiar esto.
luz.
Sí, yo tengo que
Sí,
cambiar esto porque esto no va con todo el color que yo he traído a este lugar.
bien. Bueno,
Pero me
cuando
gusta
quieres ir.
comprar de artistas. A mí me gusta comprar de starving artists. No me gusta ir a lugares.
Ok. Por algo que te represente. Y tú tienes ahí una linda esquina, puedes jugar mucho con cositas, incluso poner más chiquitos, algo que te represente, pero a la vez recuerda que no distraiga a tu televidente. Por si le pones algo
Exactamente.
muy too busy, se van a distraer más con, ah, mira lo que tiene ahí, tiene un ángel, en lugar de prestarte atención a ti.
Por eso es que no lo he puesto. Yo lo que quiero es algo más colorido y entonces tal vez ponga aquí una luz alta, como algo alto, que sea
Como
como,
eso que tengo yo. Ujú.
que eso es lo que estoy buscando. Yo he pensado, "Ay, tendría que ir a IKEA a ver el World Market ese que tú mencionaste.
Y también incluso, si te puedo aconsejar algo, jefa, con mucho amor, pondría
Ujú.
también el escritorio un poquito más lejos para que al igual que a mí te dé más perspectiva. Si no parece muy chato, como que estás ahí y la pared atrás tuyo. Entonces, para que te dé más perspectiva, mover un poco el escritorio donde lo tienes ahora, un poco más lejos de la mesa, de la pared.
De la pared, sí, lo debería hacer. Podría
Así
hacer eso.
te daría más perspectiva y le cambias un poquito los hornitos que tienes atrás.
Exacto. A mí me gustan estos, yo no sé por
Son
qué me
lindos.
gustan estos, pero sí, son diferentes. Alguien me dijo, oye, añádele color, pinta algo en ellos. Yo digo, "Uf, yo no voy a hacer eso".
No, pero de repente puedes poner dos cuadritos. Otra vez que yo acá tengo dos, tengo
Ujú.
esos dos. Después tengo la luz y tengo este acá con esos colores como neutros. Entonces, Digo y no digo nada. Esas son cosas que yo psicológicamente presto atención. La gente está entrando a tu casa, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué dice? Bueno, mira, me importa mi familia. Pero después no te digo más nada, es neutro, ¿no? Los colores,
Sí.
todo es neutro. Entonces, me llevo
Sí,
bien con
para
todos
mí
y hablo.
yo soy todo lo opuesto porque viví tantos años que no tenía nada mío en las paredes, entonces yo ahora tengo algo bien, como tú has visto en mi casa, es bien colorido, es bien caribeño.
Ujú.
Sino, al que no sepa que soy caribeña, lo sabrá cuando entra a mi casa, dice, ok, aquí estamos. Y especialmente cuando entran a la cocina y ven los dos gallos, hacen, ok, ya, entiendo. Entiende, es como que, ok, aquí está ella toda.
No, pero es bien linda tu casa, es cálida, es
Oh,
cálida.
sí, me gusta así. Entonces, ahora acabo de hacer una foto, te la debería enseñar. Déjame ir a buscarla. ¿Tenemos tiempo? Te la enseño de la
Cuatro
mamá de
minutos
mi
tengo.
mamá en Cuba. Sí, espérate, te
Oh,
la
qué
enseño ahora.
linda.
Sí, déjame ir, la enmarqué, pero no la he subido.
¿Qué?
Te enseño ahora, espérate, ahora vengo. Es que está en el
Gracias.
pasillo mío, yendo hacia mi habitación y no la he puesto porque tengo que mover esa, ese cuadro que tengo. Pero es esto, déjame ver si lo ves.
Ay, qué bonito.
Esa es la mamá y se parece mucho a mi mamá. Esa es mi mamá, el
Wow.
perfil de mi madre. Yo no me parezco tanto a mi madre, yo me parezco más a mi padre. Esto
A
se
tu papá.
tomó en el 1927 en Cuba.
Wow.
¿Tú puedes creer eso? Ella porque tú sabes, la familia de mi mamá era toda con dinero y eran todos, como se dice en Puerto Rico, la familia de mi madre eran bien come M. Ella estaba casada con el abuelo mío que fue a Cornell. Entonces ella tenía, para que tú veas, ella iba, siempre estaban en galas, así, pero galas formales, como eso, como ella estaba vestida.
Wow.
Mi mamá tenía una bebita cuando se tomó esa foto.
Pero qué lindos
Sí, no
recuerdos.
es muy linda. Sí, muy lindos recuerdos. Entonces lo pongo ahí y dije, bueno, veremos.
Sí, no, no, tienes que tenerlo ahí.
Entonces va a decir 2 minutos, en 2 minutos dirá.
Sí, acá en el chat
O
les
si
puedo
le
poner.
sabes algo, si le quieres mandar en el chat ahora mismo, 3 more minutes.
Sí.
Porque yo creo que 2 minutos no es suficiente. Dile 3 more minutes. Well, yeah, 3 more minutes. Gracias por hacer eso.
Of course. Y muchos se divierten, especialmente si es una de las primeras veces que están haciendo esto. Ay, ¿cómo lo hacen?
¿Qué cosa la? Oh,
Los
yeah.
breakout sessions, yeah. Hay 27 quiere que los traiga de regreso, ¿verdad, Elizabeth? Para que se
Sí,
aumenten
a
un
las
montón.
y 27,
Perfecto.
exactamente. Yes.
No hay problema, no hay problema.
No, no, eso, ¿dónde está?
Elizabeth,
Hi.
I got kicked out.
Oh, how come?
Oh, just
I
now?
can I can
Yeah.
reassign you. I can reassign you, Councilwoman.
Okay, thank you so much.
You bet. Qué raro eso. Ya la
No sé,
reasigné.
qué raro.
Queda un minuto,
Ok, gracias.
por favor.
Ok, perfecto. Tenía que mandar algo de... ¿Y ellos te vieron en eso aquí? Porque yo lo veo aquí, pero ellos pueden ver este chat.
Dice everyone, so they should be able to.
I'm
Los
only
traemos.
concerned de que
Pues son
bueno,
4:27.
pero
¿Los traemos?
sí, ya son 4:27, tráelos de
En,
regreso.
en 3, 2, 1, stand-by, jefa.
Ok,
Y ahí les van a dar casi 2 minutos
ya,
más.
en
Traemos.
2 minutos, ok, perfecto.
Precisamente porque la Councilwoman vino de regreso, así que. Ouch.
Ok,
Cierra en 92 segundos. Y
yo
ellos lo
sé
ven
que
en su
no,
pantalla. Ujú, ujú.
sí, yo creo que ellos no han tenido tiempo para acabar esto, pero
Yo estoy en la misma, así que qué bueno que le dimos 2 minutitos más.
sí, yo no
Y esto
creo
lo
que
ven, y
pudieron
ellos,
acabar
esto
esto.
lo ven ellos, y esto lo ven ellos, jefa.
Sí, yo sé. Aquí subió el viento, empezó el viento.
Oh, sí. Acá un poquito, está nublado, pero parece más una brisa. Los otros días sí estuvo feo, feo.
Creo que está un poco. Ok, here we go.
¿Eh?
Hi, Joe.
Hello. We're coming back.
Ujú.
Okay, great. Welcome back, everybody. Little by little.
Ujú.
I thought we were going to be the last ones, but I'm glad to see we're ahead of
Yeah,
schedule.
I don't.
The first ones.
I think it was too many questions, if you ask me. But
Well, I think it was also we got a lot of really good helpful feedback. So
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it was a good conversation.
that's good.
let's see. Do you think it'd be helpful for me to share the slide with the questions, or do we want to do this discussion in a gallery mode?
I would say let's share the slide. Before we start, what I want to do is give a tally of the polling questions. We have the exact numbers because I know Bruce asked for it, so I want to do that.
Perfect.
Perfect. Well, is everybody back?
Anna is
Everybody
missing,
back?
Drew and Steve.
Uh-oh,
Okay,
where did
Drew
Steve
is
go?
here. Okay.
They're coming back.
Oh, Anna, I admitted Anna back in.
Okay.
Okay, Anna's coming.
Lou,
Anybody
Steve,
else?
Steve, Bruce.
Lewis here. I see her.
Steve.
I see Drew also.
Steve is the only one.
Okay, Steve is the only one. Okay.
It didn't
So
move
while
us
Steve
automatically.
Okay, so while before we start the debrief, actually, while you guys were gone, Virginia and I looked at all the answers provided for the 2 polling questions. So I want to go ahead and review the questions and give you. Okay, Councilwoman Alvidrez, thank you. I have to run to my next meeting. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time, Councilwoman. We will be in touch with you when the next one is happening. So the polling questions, let me give a detail of what the results were. The first polling question was, do you agree with the general approach described of earlier notification and accessible, clear materials for all rezoning? In that question, we got 79% of the votes. 13 people could vote. 79% were yeses. There was only one no, and there was one that required more information. Virginia, do you want to say what that person said for the more information on question 1?
Yes, it says yes, provided that we want to make it easier for some rezoning, and so we'll need to have city support for smaller rezonings in certain classes so that the applicant is not burdened further. Recall this was a concern for equity in the initial meetings.
Okay, perfect. So for the next question, and all this information will be shared by my team to Brandon and his team. The second polling question was, do you agree with the general approach described of requiring additional engagement for enhanced equity considerations rezoning? Here, 69%, which were 9 people out of 13, voted yes. Only 1% voted no, and there were 3 people that voted only more information. However, one of the people that said yes also added they wanted more information. Virginia, if you want to share that aspect of the more information.
Yes, the person who said yes, but still unclear on parameters when something qualifies for enhanced equity considerations. So want to still learn more info before fully there, because I don't want that to be overly broad. One more person said needs more info. Another one said the same, need more info. I agree in principle, but due to the very recent SAP rulings, this will have to be drafted very carefully. And the last person who requested more information said, need more info. The key question as to whether it meets plans is the same. So while more review is okay, different actual requirements would be hard to support.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Also, I want to thank Kate for correcting me. It wasn't Bruce who asked for the details of these polling question. It was actually Steve. Thank you, Steve, for asking for that detail. And thank you, Kate, for bringing that to light. So with that in mind, since we only have 25 minutes left, what I want to do is now turn the discussion to what was discussed in the breakout groups. I know that there were 3 questions. Brandon, if you want to put up the 3 questions, we can discuss these. And what we will go ahead and do, or maybe Brandon, what maybe we can do is let's look at the first question. What we're going to do is we're going to do question by question. So there's 4 groups. We're going to look first at the first question. We will ask all 4 groups to provide their insights so we can have a discussion on that. Then we will go to the second question and then the third question. With that, we have close to 5 minutes for each question. So what I'm going to ask Brandon to do is I am going to read the first question and then put us all back into gallery mode so we can see each other. And then we will come back up with the second question. So the first question is, for all rezonings, is there additional information you would like to see on public-facing materials? This include notices, signs, and websites. So let's go ahead and put us all in gallery mode. And let's start with group number 1. The people that were in group number 1, who were they, Virginia? The people in group number 1 was said, I have it in front of me. It was Councilwoman Alvidrez, Joel, Anna, Lindsay, and also
Andrew Webb. Andrew Webb from the task force.
Oh, and Andrew Webb. So who it will be the person that will do the debrief on the results, and it's not Andrew Webb?
I hope it's okay if we break the rules here, but I don't think we had a clear reporter, and I was the note taker. So unless anybody objects, I can go ahead and give a quick report out. Unless Anna, I see you turn your camera on. If you'd like to do that, that would be fine too.
Oh no, I unfortunately didn't take notes, so I totally trust you. You're good to do it. Thank you.
Okay. For the other groups, make sure you have somebody else. That was one of the requests that we put in front. So go ahead, Andrew.
This is on me. I didn't ask for the group to identify a reporter until I saw we had about 10 seconds left, and so.
Okay.
But for that first question, we had some really great suggestions. One that came up was the use of QR codes to link people quickly to web-based additional information. We had an interesting discussion about whether or not we could address the kind of equity concerns in some way on either online descriptions of the proposal or even on a sign, specifically acknowledging the citywide need to address the lack of housing, and that every neighborhood kind of needs to play a role to take on some of those units, which I thought was a pretty interesting suggestion. And then, of course, recommendations to ensure that we have as much clear, plain English language, or plain language, simple language, I guess I should say, as possible, describing the proposal, so that it is kind of clear to people pretty quickly what's proposed, perhaps even describing kind of what types of building forms or what types of uses would be allowed. And then finally had a good suggestion to perhaps even acknowledging that all rezonings need to be consistent with our plan guidance, to actually list out some of those plans, so that people whose neighborhoods are impacted by a neighborhood plan or NPI plan can actually see that that's being considered, that this is an implementation of that plan right up front.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Drew. So I would like to do now, for the 3 groups left, if there's an additional information you want to add. In other words, if you discuss what group 1 discussed, that is great. But is there any additional information that was not discussed by group 1 that you want to add? So let's go for group number 2. And I see Lou raising her hand. Are you in group number 2?
I'm in group number 2, and we didn't really talk about who was going to do this, but I'll take this just a little bit to add. One of the comments made about QR codes specifically was that there are some phones that are either given to people who are part of, they were called Obamacare phones, and we had to say, what is that? People that may have certain plans that don't necessarily allow the coverage, and that may be for certain senior plans. So I didn't know this before, but there are some of those phones that maybe won't be able to utilize QR codes. So then the suggestion was that perhaps there would be a phone number where folks could actually call and talk to somebody. We had a suggestion about making sure that there was an easy, accessible FAQ section that could be a part of a standardized process, so that the information gathered from the applicant could easily be put into an FAQ, modeled with certain standard FAQ language by the city. That could include, of course, information about a plan, does the area have a plan, FAQ, and then the answer could be plugged in a pretty rote way. And then we also talked about the fact that if this was for all rezonings, there may be some of those for more equity challenged rezonings where we want to lighten that load, which is a little bit what I think Andrew Webb was saying, is that when you get further to all rezonings, you might have some more resources dedicated for those rezonings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Lou. Thank you for representing group number 2. So group number 3, who could speak? Is there anything to add? And I see Steve raising his hands. Go ahead, Steve.
Sure. I didn't take notes, but then I was appointed, so I'm going to do my best. The 2 highlights that I think were not covered already were the building forms that are shown on some of those other cities' notices are good, but they can also easily be misinterpreted, since they're usually the maximum building form. And so there needs to be something to clarify that when people look at it, and we don't want them assuming that that's what they're going to get if they support the rezoning. It could be anything that fits within that building form. And then the other thing that came up, which has kind of been my pet peeve all along, was that the RNOs are not the best vehicle in all cases to transmit information to residents in a neighborhood. And so it's out of scope for this project, but I'm just going to say it again, that the R&O system needs to change, or there needs to be another way to get information out in a similar way that doesn't depend on the volunteers.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So let's go with group number 4. We have 1 more minute to discuss this question. Anything that was not discussed that you want to add?
Yeah, a couple of minor things to add, and I lost to Caitlin in rock, paper, scissors, so I have to get this here.
All right, Bruce.
We really liked the QR code in idea on signs and postcards. And in particular, if it links to the entire project file on the city's website, and so you could get to a staff report or a planning board presentation, or the application in what it links to would grow the further into the process the rezoning application advances. And then the other thing we talked about is that this discussion about everything's filled with acronyms and so forth, and that maybe if a rezoning is to CMX8, for example, that a sign or a postcard say that it's mixed use 8 stories, so that there's less mystery to someone seeing the sign initially. Same with design overlays and billboard overlays, whatever it might be. So those are the 2 additions to all the previous discussion, which I think our group agrees with.
Perfect. Great. So thank you, Bruce. So let me go ahead and do the second question. No need to bring it up to Brandon. I have it here. For enhanced equity considerations, what elements will help ensure meaningful engagement? Let me start with group number 3. What would you say about that? For enhanced equity considerations, what elements will help ensure meaningful engagement? Anybody from group number 3 that want to talk?
I'm ready.
Steve, go ahead.
The 3 things that I have notes on were needing to show that engagement worked. I'm sorry, that's the question. Transparency is needed earlier in the process. There are different needs for different kinds of engagement in different areas, maybe depending even on the kind of rezoning, but particularly the equity issues are different in different areas. And then the idea that navigators could be a very helpful tool for getting information to people and translating it from the fairly officious way that it's presented in a formal rezoning. I think a lot of us, myself included, have been informal or volunteer navigators, but it's not an efficient and uniform process. So if there's some way we could regularize that and improve it.
Okay, perfect. So group number 4, anything you want to add for that question number 2 that has not been addressed by Steve?
We talked some about that there could be peril to the city and to all stakeholders and applicants of having a system that is not uniform citywide, and that there could be expectations management challenges if you're a community member, for example, and you participate in one rezoning and it is not an enhanced equity one, and then the next one comes along and it is, why are the processes different, and what, those types of things. And I think we do not take exception to that there are rezonings that might have unique equity situations, but that it could create a lot of confusion in worry. We talked about, is it subjective are the criteria
Mhm.
subjective as to what is an enhanced equity rezoning and what is not? And who makes
Okay.
that call? And
Okay.
those types of things were kind of the focus of our discussion. Of Caitlin, if you have anything
Okay.
to add, dive in.
Okay.
The only thing I guess I'd add is we kind of talked about the feedback loop a little, where you know, it's difficult if you have one neighborhood meeting and you're not able to show up on that particular Thursday night, right, or something, to provide input.
Mhm.
But also making sure that when, you know, if you just have a website where people can post comments to or questions, that there's no feedback loop or conversation that results from that. It can just kind of be one way. And so how do we make it more equitable where people can provide comments and ask questions over time, but there's a feedback loop back to them to helpfully explain things or adjust and let them know that there were changes made based on those comments. And I don't have the answer for that, but I think thinking about that would really enhance the communication.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much. So let's go to group one. We have only 1 more minute left for this question. This is the third question. We're going to do it on open discussion. So group one and then group two. Who will go on group one? Anything you need to add? Andrew? You're muted.
Sorry about that. And then Anna and Joel, please feel free to jump in if I miss anything here. But to add what other groups talked about, I think we had recommendations to ensure that the outreach done in for these higher equity considerations, rezonings, are introduced as opportunities for conversation with communities about the potential benefits that might result, and to allow discussion on how the proposed rezoning may enable or help meet needs that have been identified in those area plans as kind of deficiencies for the area. Let's see, we did have some interesting conversation around ensuring that we're not just that applicants are not just doing outreach to the people who live immediately around a site, but also to people who may want to live in this neighborhood, or who live in the wider city and may be looking for other opportunities in other parts of the city, or people who would be driving or cycling through or otherwise accessing the site, to make sure that the input reflects their needs as well. Let's see, I think that pretty much covers what we talked about that was beyond what has already been brought up.
Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead to go to the last group, group two, and then we have a few minutes left to address question 3. Group 2.
Actually,
anything that you want to add?
I think most everything's been covered, but we really had a lot of conversation about really gathering community input and what does that mean? Census tract versus actually getting into the community, building trust, having real communications. Again, to Steve Harley's point about what deficiencies there may be in the R&O system and how can they frankly be fixed. I know that those of us on the INC board are working on that to try to make sure, but also being sensitive to the fact that this has to be a uniform process. And so how do we make sure that the system that is in place now really centers the voices of the people that are in those communities most impacted by the applications?
Excellent point. Thank you, Lou. So this is what we're going to do for the third question. I think one group was not able to go and have the entire third question discussion. But the question is there anything missing from the approach for strategy 2? And we would like to open it up now here for the few minutes that we have left. Is there anything missing? And if you did not agree with the approach, what would you change? So whoever wants to talk, I would say, please raise your hand and then I will call on you. So anybody that wants to chat about this. And before we go there, I want to say a shout out to Londell Jackson and your dog. I'm in love with your dog that keeps on going in and out. Next time he can join. Anyway, so if anybody wants to talk about, is there anything missing from the strategy? Is if you did not agree on the approach, what is it? What needs to change? Did anybody discuss this during the, Lundell, go ahead. And then Caitlin after him. Did he like jump? Lundell Jackson, can you go ahead? You're first. You're muted.
It's the problem of having too many mute buttons on my whatever. So our group did not get a chance to address it, so I'll just address it with my own opinion. And similar to what I put in the chat is, I hear a desire to establish uniformity. And I think it's really important to understand the differences between equality and equity. Uniformity is a form of equality. Let's do the same thing in every place, and hopefully it will address everybody's needs. Equity is about understanding what the certain group of people need in order to participate fully. And so I think there needs to be a great understanding in how to reach into populations while creating consistent pieces, but understanding that depending upon where these types of communications and outreaches are going, there needs to be some flexibility to address and to adjust and to fit in those communities, because I can't, there's inherently different styles of communication, population demographics, and so on and so forth from one council district to the next, from one block to the next, for crying out loud. So I think it's really important to understand that, what could be lost by creating an inflexible system based on perceived equality, because it's really an equality effort to meet a certain demographic of individuals.
Okay, great point. Thank you for sharing that. Caitlin, you have your hand raised.
Sure, thank you. And Londa, that was so well captured. I think you put it very well. So thank you for sharing that. And I think the only thing I would add is I agree. And I think a big piece of it is managing expectations when, because of equity reasons, there is a need to do it differently, and being able to explain why, right? I think that's where the disconnect happens. The only thing I was going to add is we talked briefly about sort of what CPD's role is in the engagement process. So I'm sure Liz has it in her notes, but in other communities, sometimes the city staff person attends the neighborhood meetings, serves as more of a facilitator, answers questions that are a little bit more sort of city oriented rather than, and so I think it's more of a question of what thought has happened so far in CPD, what thought should this group have about what CPD's role is in that community engagement, and especially on the enhanced community engagement ones. And then the only other thing I was going to say is I know we've broken this into maybe 3 different groupings. And I would say of the 3 we did last time and then this, and we have more coming, this is the one where I feel like there's the most consensus, and probably CPD is most clear and has gotten the clearest direction from this group. I mean, I think we have a lot of clear improvements and consensus around them, which I think is a really good thing. I think some of the other buckets we have could be more challenging.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? Because I'm very mindful of time. We have 5 minutes left, and I want to hand it over to Brandon to conclude. But any other comments or questions that anybody wants to share with the group? Okay. Well, I think thank you for your participation and also your patience and us doing an anonymous poll. But I think we got the results that we were looking at in terms of providing everybody the confidence of how to vote, however they wanted to vote. All the notes have been taken. They will be reviewed, obviously, by Brandon and the team. And we will have another gathering sometime in September, October. I know that that will come out from Brandon. So, Brandon, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks everybody for that great input. It's a really good discussion that we've had today. So, as mentioned just by Caitlin and the meeting materials email that you got, the project team would like to use small working groups to get through these more challenging topics that we have upcoming. We are asking, we have 4 topics for task force members to choose from. We'd like you to choose at least one that you're most interested in. If you have any questions about them, please feel free to reach out to me. We'd also like to hold these meetings in person so folks can have a chance to meet each other face to face if you're interested. And we'll also have a hybrid option. We're anticipating about 2 meetings per topic that will be on a monthly basis, beginning in late September and wrapping up by early November. So when we release those dates, which will be very soon, we strongly encourage you to sign up for at least one. And thank you. I can't thank you enough for your...
So could I suggest something, Brandon? Because
Sure.
you know, you may get a lot of people to sign up for the same one. I would recommend for everybody to basically provide a prioritization of what they want, like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, an order of preference. And then that way you can work and get the groups to be almost a similar size.
That's likely what the approach that we're going to be using. And also when folks see what the potential dates are, that might also sway which one they're more interested in. So that'll be a second way to make sure that those groups are evenly divided.
And also Caitlin is asking how to sign up. I'm assuming is that they will send you an email directly to you, correct?
Correct. We'll be sending out an email with the dates and likely a doodle poll.
Okay. And I know that somebody else had Anna. Didn't Anna have her hands up?
That was the same question. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So it is, oh my, it is almost 5 o'clock on the dot. So I want to thank everybody for being here and staying the entire 2 hours. As you can see, there is the website for any more information. You will be receiving an email from Brandon concerning the 4 small groups, and then we will reconvene also as a task force again later on, but all that information will be shared with all of you via email. I also want to thank Virginia, my co-pilot, and making this to be smooth transition, getting all the information we needed, and also for the city and county of Denver members that took all the notes. We appreciate that as well. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.